Dr. Bala, we can begin now.
Yeah, I hope I am audible, right?
Yes, you are.
Namaste, good morning.
Yes, you are.
Namaste, good morning. Today's distinguished speakers, Professor K. Subrahmanyam ji, Pro Chancellor of Svyasa University, Shri Vivek Atray ji, Chairperson, Yogananda Center for Theology, Shoolini University, Dr. Gitesh Nirban, co-convener of this webinar, distinguished invitees, and dear friends interested in Mahābhārata scholarship. International Yoga Day wishes to you all. I welcome you all to this 37th session of this series of webinars on Mahābhārata that are being hosted by Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, and Kamala Nehru College, University of Delhi. We are resuming after a short break that we have taken, and this week we are commemorating International Yoga Day. That is how we thought this is the most appropriate time to resume. I hope all of you are doing well and keeping safe during these uncertain times of COVID-19 pandemic. We are all affected by it in one way or the other, and we need to know, we need to divert our minds in these troubled times, beyond the news that we see in the media and beyond the statistics that we hear about the COVID-19 cases. At least for some time in a day, we have to divert our minds, and we believe that these webinars would really help us in diverting our mind and focusing our mind in an appropriate and right way. So these webinars are being organized under the aegis of Spark Project, which is a scheme for promotion of academic and research collaboration, an initiative of Ministry of Education, Government of India. The title of the project is Yoga Consciousness in Mahābhārata and Bhagavad Gita, an ethical value for societal and political well-being. We are working as a team for this project along with Professor Vishwa Adluri from Hunter College, City University of New York, USA, and Dr. Joydeep Bagchi from Germany, who is associated presently with the Hindu University of America, and Dr. Gitesh Nirban from Department of Philosophy, Kamala Nehru College, and me, Professor Bala, head of the Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi. We have an extended team that consists of Ms. Jayashree Jha, Ms. Anmolpreet Kaur, who are research scholars in the Department of Philosophy, working on various aspects of Mahābhārata for their doctoral work. And we also have Ms. Megha Kapoor and Deepshika joining us and trying to help us in this project. The aim of this project that we have picked up is to build a new approach to yoga that combines theoretical and practical perspectives. And we also aim to understand yoga beyond a set of postures as an overarching term for salvic practices and to see how it is embedded in the social and political reality. And our purpose also in this project to reappropriate the texts of classical Hinduism, which have suffered from Orientalist approaches, in order to articulate the vision of yoga consciousness. We try to demonstrate how answers to the question of right action at societal and political levels can be explored through the conception of yoga consciousness in Mahābhārata and Bhagavad Gita that transcends sectarian and doctrinal boundaries to create a global system of thought and practice. And we also try to look and explicate the universal and philanthropic and humanitarian aspects of Hinduism as echoed in Mahābhārata and Bhagavad Gita. So with these aims in our mind, we have began this project and we are continuing to explore these aspects in our research and also by inviting various scholars to respond and speak on these aspects of the text and help us and also the general audience in understanding the text in a better way. Our attempt here is not just to explore various aspects of Mahābhārata, but also to reach diverse audience. So that's what made us begin this webinar series. And these series of webinars are our humble attempt to make the various aspects of Mahābhārata reach the diverse audience who hold interest in the study of the epic. We started this series of webinars during the extreme phase of lockdown to engage minds with Mahābhārata. We have had the privilege of hosting scholars of repute from universities and organizations in India and abroad, wherein diverse topics related to Mahābhārata and Bhagavad Gita have been touched, ranging from social and political well-being, ethical dilemmas, justice, consciousness, karma yoga, instrumental violence, and environmental influences, dialogical consciousness, all as an attempt to explore Mahābhārata for the human well-being. Today, we are honored to have with us Professor K. Subrahmanyam, who is the Pro-Chancellor of Svyasa University, who would be speaking to us on ethical values in Mahābhārata in the light of yoga, and also Mr. Vivek Atray, Chairperson of Yogananda Center for Theology, Shoolini University. In fact, this is the only theology center that we have in India as of now, friends. So we should really appreciate the efforts of this university in coming forward and establishing a theology center. Similarly, the only university that we have for yoga is Svyasa University, completely oriented towards consciousness studies and yogic studies. So we are really privileged to have these two scholars, scholar administrators with us to share their thoughts on yoga consciousness with us. So I welcome both of them, and I request Dr. Geetesh to formally introduce both the speakers and take the proceedings further. Over to you, Dr. Geetesh.
Thank you, Professor Bala. Namaskar to all. We are very delighted and honored to commemorate the International Yoga Day as a part of the ongoing webinar series under the aegis of the project that Professor Bala just shared with all of us. Yoga consciousness is undoubtedly a topic of greater value today than ever before, especially when we all have been grappling with the issues of the virus that affected the physical and mental well-being of all around. We wish all of you health and safety. Today, we're very honored, as Dr. Bala just said, to have the distinguished speakers from two distinguished universities doing very specific work related to the Indian tradition. Let me introduce each one of them, which is really a privilege for me during each session. Behind a series of flexible postures and consummate breathing exercises practiced to achieve wholesome control of the body and mind lies the true philosophy of attaining enduring bliss and supreme joy. It's all about yoga. And that's what Dr. K. Subrahmanyam stands for, one of the speakers of the day. Dr. K. Subrahmanyam is a torchbearer in the increasingly fascinating world of yoga while heading the cause of the well-being of people in general. A crusader of yoga and distinguished man of letters, Dr. K. Subrahmanyam wears a feathered cap with many acclaimed awards and accolades to his credit. Acharya Ratna from Telugu Association Chennai and Acharya Pranuk from Veda Academy Chennai. Holding prominent positions of Dean at Swami Vivekananda Yoga Anusandhan Samstha Svyasa Yoga University Bangalore, Chairman, Academic Council Vivekananda Educational Society, and President, Vivekananda Academy of Cultural Studies, Dr. Subrahmanyam is a tremendous source of influence in taking and talking about the roots of this ancient art of yoga to the grassroots levels of the society. Presently, he is the Pro-Chancellor at Svyasa Yoga University, Bangalore. He has been kind enough to share precious time for us under the aegis of Spark webinar to deliver an address on ethical values in Mahābhārata in the light of yoga. We welcome you, sir, on behalf of the Team Spark project. Welcome. Our next speaker of the day is Mr. Vivek Atray, formerly from Indian Administrative Services. He's a motivational speaker, author, mentor, advisor, columnist, and a visiting professor. He's been a part of 8 TEDx talks and 3 highly popular Josh talks. Over 30 lakh people have viewed his videos on YouTube. He's the founder of Suvichar Think Tank, a visiting professor and chairman, Yogananda Center for Theology at Shoolini University, which Dr. Bala just mentioned how it's the only university with a department of theology. He addresses audiences from industry, academia, government on the nuances of leadership, good governance, emotional intelligence, life skills, people skills, public speaking skills, meditation, calmness, entrepreneurship, education, and sports management. He has inspired thousands of youngsters to adopt a cheerful, positive, and multidimensional approach to their lives. Mr. Vivek Atray is an acclaimed orator and has spoken in India and abroad at various organizations, universities, colleges, schools, and companies. Mr. Atray is an electronics engineer from NIT Kurukshetra. He has a diploma in French. He's a former IS officer and wears many feathers in his cap. His favorite book is The Autobiography of Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Today, he's going to be sharing his thoughts on universal applicability of yoga through the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. And we eagerly wait to hear from him. We are privileged to have you amongst us, sir. Welcome to Spark Webinar Platform. I now invite Mr. Atray to deliver the address first.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gitesh, and thank you very much, Dr. Bala, for this warm introduction. It's a privilege for me to be speaking along with Professor Subrahmanyam, who is such a distinguished professor and doyen of yoga. It's a wonderful opportunity to share thoughts, and it's a great occasion, the International Yoga Day. In fact, by organizing this series of webinars, you are doing yeoman service to the community, to the academia, and by keeping the theme as the Mahābhārata and the Indian thought, Indian philosophy, deep spirituality, it is all the more important for us to think, learn, share, get together, exchange, interact. As was said, I am more of an administrator than a professor, a recent convert to the world of academia, but I have been practicing yoga and meditation for the last 15 years or so. And I'm a deep follower of Paramahansa Yogananda, about whose teachings I will speak, but I will also speak generally on whatever I know about the theme. The Yogananda Center for Theology at Shoolini University has come up recently. And we had the privilege of having Professor Balaganpati as one of the speakers in one of the webinars we organized. And he spoke very deeply and well on the science of spirituality and philosophy. And in fact, it is a wonderful exchange through our university, through your university and department. And Paramahansa Yogananda ji, about whose teachings I will speak, exemplified that by telling us very deeply through his autobiography, which most of you may have read or heard of, that life is not about short-term goals or material success. I will read a little bit from his writings. But before that, let me just lay the context. Paramahansa Yogananda ji went to the US as a 27-year-old in 1920, which is 101 years ago. At that time in the West, nobody had heard of yoga. A dark-skinned individual, short and stocky perhaps, with long hair, was unheard of in World War I US. People were askance when they saw him on the streets. Children would laugh at him. Of course, Swami Vivekananda had been there in 1893. And at that time, or 1894, my guru, so impressed by Vivekananda's talk. And Vivekananda said, your guru will come later. And that guru at that time was only 1 year old. But Paramahansa Yogananda came to America in 1920, and many followers were converted to his school of thought. His talks were very popular. There are pictures in the autobiography of a yogi and elsewhere of about 2,000 people or more in one packed hall in the 1920s. And it defies imagination as to how an individual from India who spoke with a Bengali accent, but spoke impeccable English, could sway American-minded people who were really not thinking of spirituality in those very materialistic times towards yoga and meditation. A large number of followers came in. His book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, which was published in the 1940s, a part of a trilogy of books based on his lectures. And the topic of this lecture is the topic of my talk today. He spoke on the universality of yoga. In 1944, at Self-Realization Fellowship Temple, Hollywood, California, he said, yoga is a system of scientific methods for reuniting the soul with spirit. We have come down from God and we must reascend to Him. We have seemingly become separated from our Father, and we must consciously reunite with Him. Yoga teaches us how to rise above the delusion of separation and realize our oneness with God. The poet Milton wrote of the soul of man and how it must regain paradise. That is the purpose and goal of yoga, to regain the lost paradise of soul consciousness, by which man knows that he is and ever has been one with spirit. The world's various religions are based more or less on the beliefs of man. But the true basis of religion should be a science that all devotees may apply in order to reach out to our one Father, God. Yoga is that science. The practice of a science of religion is imperative, he says. Different dogmatic isms have kept mankind divided. Although Jesus pointed out, if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Unity among various religions may be brought about only when the individuals who practice those religions become actually aware of God within. Then we shall have a true brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. Of course, Paramahansa Yogananda often uses the term Divine Mother for God. And even in our prayers, we sometimes say Heavenly Father and sometimes we say Divine Mother. And he talks of the Divine Mother aspect of God as being more loving and more approachable, perhaps. And in the same writings, I'll just read a couple of more paras from there. On the topic, yoga converts theology to practical experience. As Professor Bala very rightly said, Shoolini's Yogananda Center for Theology is probably the only one in the country at the moment. But the experience of yoga and practical experience of the Almighty is obviously superior and more important and all-important compared to theology. Yoga enables man to perceive the truth in all religions. And the word here, the key word is perceive. The 10 commandments are preached in various words in every religion. Of course, he was speaking in America. But the two greatest commandments are those emphasized by Jesus. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And he explains, loving God with all thy mind means withdrawing one's attention from the senses and giving it to God, giving to him one's whole concentration in meditation. Every seeker of God must learn to concentrate A prayer that one utters while at the same time thinking of other things in the background of the mind is not a true prayer and is unheeded by God. Yoga teaches that in order to find the Father, it is first necessary to seek Him with all one's mind, with concentration that is one-pointed. Some people say that the Hindus are more adapted to the practice of yoga, that yoga is not suited to Westerners. Now is the universality aspect. This is not true. Many Westerners are at present in a better position to practice yoga than many Hindus are, because scientific advancement have given Westerners much free time. So in today's era, I doubt that anyone has free time. They have to set aside time for priorities. India should more and more utilize the progressive material methods of the West to make life freer. And the West should take from India the practical metaphysical methods of yoga, whereby every man may find his way to God. Yoga is not a sect, but a universally applicable science by which we can find our Father. Yoga is for everybody, for the people of the West as well as those of the East. One would not say that the telephone is not for the East just because it was invented in the West. Similarly, the methods of yoga, although developed in the East, are not exclusively for the East, but are useful to all mankind. Whether a man is born in India or in America, he someday has to die. Why not learn to die daily in God like St. Paul? Yoga teaches the method. Man lives in the body as a prisoner. When his term is over, he suffers the indignity of being thrown out. Love of the body is therefore nothing more than love of jail. Long accustomed to living in the body, we have forgotten what real freedom means. Before creation existed, there was cosmic consciousness, spirit of God, the absolute, ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss, beyond form and manifestation. When creation came into being, cosmic consciousness descended into the physical universe, where it manifests as Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness. Paramahansa Yogananda often used the analogy of the battle within the Kurukshetra within. Since we are on a overall theme of Mahābhārata, just to spend a couple of minutes on that. So he, in his wonderful interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, which is titled God Talks with Arjuna, he interprets the battle as being the battle between the forces of the Kauravas and Pandavas within each human being. And he speaks of Sanjaya as that introspection, which can see, which can truly analyze the forces on both sides. And he says that sometimes the Kauravas win the day and sometimes the Pandavas win the day. The fear, worry, anger, negativity, hatred, which is represented by the forces of evil, and the balance, calmness, maturity, let me use a modern term, emotional intelligence, and those qualities which are positive, cheerful, helpful to others, compassion, care, love, all these qualities represent the good forces. And that Kurukshetra within is what has to be won. But he also goes on to emphasize that it is not only by right attitude, by leading a good life of helping others, by being a good human being, that you can win this battle. Yoga and meditation is the key. And he also goes on to describe Kriya Yoga, which is used very often in not only the autobiography, but has also been mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. And he says as a Kriya Yoga method, he says the life of an advanced Kriya Yogi is influenced not by past effects, by effects of past actions, but solely by directions from the soul. The devotee thus avoids the slow evolutionary monitors of egotistical action good or bad, of common life, cumbrous and snail-like to the eagle hearts. And just to ponder over this for a minute, being a good human being without yoga and meditation is an incomplete life. You can be having good karma. You can evolve slowly over many lifetimes that way. And perhaps he gives the figure of 1,000 lifetimes, where you, being a good human being and living an orderly life with the right attitude, will lead you to God in 1,000 lifetimes. But by practicing yoga and meditation, hasten the process of evolution. He says the superior method of soul living frees the yogi, emerging from his ego prison. He tastes the deep air of omnipresence. The thraldom of natural living is in contrast set in a pace humiliating. A pace of 1,000 lives is a pace humiliating to the soul. Confirming his life merely to the evolutionary order, a man can command no concessionary haste from nature. And here he's talking obviously about 1,000 human lives. And when does one become a human? After billions of lives of various organisms. And then he's saying that no concessionary haste can be achieved from nature at that rate. Though he lived without error against the laws that govern his body and mind, he still requires, he says, 1,000,000 years of masquerading incarnations to attain final emancipation. However, the telescopic methods of a yogi, disengaging himself from physical and mental identifications in favor of soul individuality, are therefore commended to those who eye with revolt 1,000 years. This numerical periphery is enlarged for the ordinary man who lives in harmony not with nature, let alone his soul, pursuing instead unnatural complexities and offending his thoughts and body the sweet sanities of nature. For him, 2 times 1,000,000 years can scarce suffice for liberation. The thought here is so pure and beautiful. Without yoga and scientific methods of attainment of self-realization, which is the ultimate goal of mankind, leading an orderly good life is not enough. Leading a disorderly life with totally wrong priorities of material wealth and success is totally not enough. If we look, if I can speak in my own language for a minute, if we look at the most powerful man in the world, we look at the richest man in the world and the most famous man or woman in the world, happiness is limited, fame is limited, power is limited, time is limited, and wealth is definitely limited. The richest men in the world, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, unfortunately separated from their wives. If the richest man in the world cannot, if I can use a very casual term, keep his wife happy, what is the life about then? What about power? I know this is a public platform, but Mr. Donald Trump in 4 years did not really smile during his most powerful tenure. Barack Obama was different. Joe Biden is probably better than Mr. Trump. The point is, the most powerful man in the world also does not achieve success, which is true happiness. And fame is so fleeting that we don't even need to talk about anybody who is famous today and gone tomorrow. Paramahansa Yogananda says, identifying himself with a shallow ego, man takes for granted that it is he who thinks, wills, feels, digests meals, and keeps himself alive, never admitting, and this is one of my favorite words or phrases from the autobiography, never admitting through reflection, bracket, only a little would suffice. Thoda bahut to soch lijiye us taraf. That in his ordinary life, he is not but a puppet of past actions, karma, and of nature or environment. Each man's intellectual reactions, feelings, moods, and habits are merely effects of past causes, whether of this or a prior life. Lofty above such influences, however, is his regal soul. Spurning the transitory truths and freedoms, the Kriya Yogi passes beyond all disillusionment into his unfettered being. The world's scriptures declare man to be not a corruptible body, but a living soul. In Kriya Yoga, he finds a method to prove the scriptural affirmation. Now, inspirational writings and teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, which I'm talking about, and I'll just conclude in a couple of minutes, they tell us very clearly for the common man. That is why the universality of yoga is made so clear. Everybody can follow it. And the universality is further extended to the three types of lives: a householder life, a monk or a monastic, a nun, or a life of service, which is the distinction made out in his writings. Anybody in any path can follow yoga, can follow meditation, can follow scientific methods to attain salvation. And yoga gives that flexibility. Nobody is required to be performing yoga, scientific meditation 24 hours a day. In the autobiography, there is a saint who has meditated for 40 years for 16 hours a day. And he says, I have done very little in life. And he says, I'm very far from God. And poor Paramahansa Yogananda at that time is a teenager, little young boy. And he is aghast. He says, what am I to do now in this life? But the point is the effort we make. So in our satsangs and talks of Yogoda Satsang Society, which is the organization founded by Paramahansa Yogananda, which also completed 104 years this year, effort is progress is the key sentence for all of us. Effort means progress. Scientific results will come. And Paramahansa Yogananda also writes, Kriya Yoga plus devotion works like mathematics. We do not see, we do not sense, we don't get report cards every 6 months. This is your score. No. One day we find our moods have gone, our calmness is high, our reactions are better. Yoga is not only, and this I don't need to say in such an elevated forum, is not physical exercises, is not, certainly not, just a way to live. It is a scientific method to attain God. And that union with God can come by the practice and experience, not by theorizing and reading and writing, although that is a great activity because we are creating awareness. The more that the young people find the path of yoga towards God, the better the world will be. And it is my firm belief that even though we're living in tough times and we are living in times which are perhaps pernicious and negative and caustic, we need to rise above, understand the bigger picture of life, and to inculcate in the youth and children the importance of yoga, the importance of meditation. And I'll end with a short incident in fact, it's a practice in our toddler school run by my wife, Nina. And she makes these toddlers sit down for 5 minutes for meditation. Of course, they do yoga pranayam also. And they sit for 5 minutes for meditation as 3 to 5 year old children. Even though they might be not be opening their eyes, looking at each other, smiling, giggling, but they know this is time for meditation. It becomes a part of their lives at the age of 3, at the age of 4, at the age of 5. And I would like to urge all the practitioners of yoga in India through your forum or whoever listens to focus not only on the physical aspects of, but the true inner aspects of yoga as well. The body is only prepared for meditation by yoga. It is prepared. Physical fitness is important. We cannot be meditating through a broken microphone, as Paramahansa Yogananda writes. Microphone has to be in good shape. Yoga is the key. And then we meditate, that is the purpose of life. That is why how we balance our body, mind, and soul is the key. So it is not for me to go on pontificating. I'm just trying to bring out the points which I have learned, which I have shared now. And Paramahansa Yogananda's best favorite quotes I'll end with. One of his quotes is to be calmly active and actively calm. Now, if we look at it, it's a very simple point. All of us are dynamic, active people with smartphones and WhatsApp and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Clubhouse. But we need to be calm within. And actively calm is even more important. How am I at 11:30 a.m.? How am I at 1:30 p.m. every day? How am I at 7:30 p.m.? Is my mind calm anymore? Can I be actively calm by reminding myself to be calm? Maybe practice a little bit of Kriya Yoga or whatever I know of yoga. Maybe calm myself down in the middle of the peak of that busy day. Between webinars, you have 10 minutes like I do normally and Balaji has. In those 10 minutes, can we also find 2 minutes for meditation? Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to have been invited. And on behalf of the Yogananda Center for Theology, Shoolini University, I'm truly grateful. And thank you. And I'm sure in future we will do many more exchanges. We will also invite your scholars to speak at Shoolini University. And it will be a privilege also to invite Professor Subrahmanyam and other scholars as well. Jai Guru. For now.
Thank you, Shri Atray for sharing the deeper thoughts of Shri Paramahansa Yogananda ji in light of yoga with us today. And more importantly, through your practice of his teachings, which definitely is well exhibited, well shared with us, because words aligned with practice makes a greater impact on the minds of others. You rightly said, experience of yoga is more important than the theological study of it. And if it is coming from you, who is taking care of the Center for Theology, yes, we are taking it up more seriously. So this inner Kurukshetra that we grapple with due to the disorderly lives, as you said, that we unknowingly embrace, can definitely be worked upon through yoga and meditation. And as you shared how yoga gives us the flexibility to practice it, effort is the progress. Yoga is the key, as Shri Paramahansa Yogananda ji said. And I'm very happy to hear from you, because I did do a course on Kriya Yoga from SRF, where we have the center in Delhi. So thank you for being with us today and leaving us with the thought to be calmly active and actively calm. We're going to follow this. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well summarized. Thank you so much.
I now call upon and invite Dr. Subrahmanyam to share his words with us.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Vande Shambhumumapatim Suragurum Vande Jagat Karanam Vande Pannagabhushanam Shashidharam Vande Pasunam Patim Vande Surya Shashanka Vanninayanam Vande Mukunda Priyam Vande Bhaktajana Asrayancha Varadam Vande Bhaktajana Asrayancha Varadam Vande Shivam Shankaram. At the outset, I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity. Also, I am very, very happy to listen to the predecessor, wonderful exponent of Yoganandagiri's yoga. I am allotted the topic, ethical values in the light of yoga. When we speak of yoga, the best yogi is Sri Krishna. Yatra Yogishvara Krishna. Is not that Yogeshwara the greatest humanist? He has used yoga for humanism. Now, what is the definition then of yoga? Yoga includes human values and transcends human values. Let us keep that definition in mind. In the Mahābhārata, we have the great Bhagavad Gita. As soon as Arjuna arrives on the battlefield, he declares, Nakanche Vijayam Krishna Nacharajyam Sukhanicha. I don't want the kingdom. I don't want to wage a war. I don't want to fight. Why? Because it is bloodshed. It is killing people. When he is moved with pity, when he is moved with compassion, is it not ethics? Is it not humanism? But the entire Bhagavad Gita is Yoga Shastra. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. Does it mean Yoga Shastra makes a man fight, makes a man cruel, makes a man shed the blood? Are they not self-contradictory? On one side, Sri Krishna is a humanist.
Quelle est ta nationalité?
Yes. Is it audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. I find some sound, that's why. Okay, fine. Now, Bhagavad Gita starts with human values, ethics. And Krishna taught Arjuna to fight. Values are various types. Keep that thought in mind. Bhagavad Gita starts with human values, and the entire Yoga Shastra is to include the human values because Yogi is for Sri Krishna. And at the same time, it transcends them. It is inclusive of ethics and transcending ethics. This is the speciality of yoga. We will have a small analysis because you are all highly intellectually oriented. First of all, what's a value and how values are there, how they all evolve into yoga. These are the 3 points. A value is a value when it is of use to us. A thing is of value if it is useful to us. A TV is useful and it is of use. A thing which is permanently useful, at all levels useful, and that thing is of greatest value. Value at every level, value at every point of time, value universally. That is value. Now, yoga is of value at every level. Yoga is of value at all times. Yoga is of value at all places. It is universally useful, eternally useful, at all levels useful. And therefore, the derivation of the definition is yoga is to be peacefully useful and usefully peaceful. I repeat, yoga is to be peacefully useful and usefully peaceful. The other definition which I have already said is yoga is inclusive of every value, especially human values. And then transcends the values. They appear to be contradictory. What are the various values we have? Moral values, ethical values, social values, national values, philosophical values, finally, spiritual values. When we come to that spiritual value, it is inclusive of all the earlier values which I have mentioned. In Bhagavad Gita itself, we find all of them. Arjun says, I don't want the kingdom because it includes killing. It's inhuman. Mention has been made of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was in Chicago. On the 11th of September 1893, he became a global personality. That night, he was given partial lodgings. The distinguished people of the city visited him with gifts. Encomiums were showered on his head. Gifts were freely flowing towards him. Very good items of delicious food were all given to him. By the time all the guests left his room, it was about 11 o'clock in the night. 11th September happened to be a Monday. The previous day, Sunday, Vivekananda was an unknown monk. He was tired. He had no sleep. He was waiting for the opportunity, and luckily the opportunity turned in his favor. That night, if any were to be in his position, as soon as the guests left him in the room, he would have rushed to the food, would have enjoyed the meal, and would have retired. He would have slept. Swami Vivekananda did not rush to the food, did not sleep immediately. He was a yogi. And then he rolled on the floor and wept profusely, composed 2 sentences. Number 1, him I call a Mahatma, whose heart bleeds for the poor. That is ethics. When thousands and thousands of my fellow human beings in India do not have enough food to eat, what right do I have to enjoy the pleasures of this food? And he did not sleep. He rolled and wept. Is he a humanist or is he a yogi? Both. A yogi is a humanist, and a humanist fulfills his purpose, culminates, flowers, blossoms, unfolds as a yogi. There cannot be a greater yogi than Vivekananda, and there cannot be a greater humanist than Vivekananda. In Mahābhārata, the greatest person is Sri Krishna, and greatest humanist is also Sri Krishna. How is it he was in favor of Pandavas? Because they were modest, because they were ethical, because they were humane. Why did he come to the rescue of Draupadi? Because she was in distress. Krishna was first and foremost a humanist. That humanism is ethics. The fulfillment of ethics is yoga. One is not different from the other. We find this Swami Vivekananda composing those beautiful sentences, him I call a Mahatma, whose heart bleeds for the poor. On the same day, the same night, he composed the second sentence, him I call a Duratma, him I call a traitor, him I call a Drohi, him I call a scoundrel, who having been educated at the cost of millions and millions of fellow human beings, does not think of them, does not live for them, does not love them. How many traitors do we have? Yoga never excludes humanism. And here, strangely, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, we find Arjuna to be a humanist, and Krishna teaches him to fight. And this humanism is born of two reasons. Number one is attachment.
So you're not audible. I think there is a connectivity issue. He will have to rejoin.
Is it clear now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fine. See, there was a power failure here. We moved to the mobile and again power arrived. Maybe there is some problem in the technical side. I am not a technician. I am not a yogi of making miracles. Therefore, I was unable to change. The boy has helped. And now, see, Krishna's humanism, Arjuna's humanism, there's a lot of difference. In the first scene, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Krishna did not speak. And we find only the humanism of Arjuna. And that is born out of attachment. My father, my teacher, my master, all these people, my. And you find 17 chapters of conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And what was Krishna trying to drive home? That difference between humanism born of egoism or attachment, humanism born of egolessness. And at the end, Arjuna declares, Nasto mohaha, smrutir labdhaha, stitosmi gata sandeha, karishye vachanam tava. What is the purpose of this yoga instruction? Yoga Shastra, the book is. It is to transcend that attachment, to dispel that egoism, to break that bondage or moha. Nasto moha. Krishna is never of attachment. Is he not concerned about the welfare of Abhimanyu? But how is it he has kept quiet? He was not same Krishna capable of saving him when he was in the womb of his mother, Uttara? There was compassion. There was humanism. That difference between humanism born of attachment and humanism born of cosmic outlook is to be learned. That is the purpose of yoga. You will find a small episode. Many people are of the view that moral values and ethical values are not there while practicing yoga. No. We find two characters, Atray and Anasuya. Atray is not an individual. Anasuya is not an individual. Anasuya is a symbol. Atray is a symbol. Atray is a symbol for yoga. And yoga is to transcend avasthatraya, kalatraya, karmatraya, kriyatraya. We have all three, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti to be transcended. Bhuta, Bhavishyat, Vartamana to be transcended. Sanchita, Agami, Prarabdha to be transcended. Male, female, neuter to be transcended. We find many threes. Na plus 3 Atray. A person who transcends all these trios is called Atray. Is called a yogi. And Sri Krishna has transcended all of them. Who can transcend? who is able to master the humanism, be a humanist, also a moralist. Anasuya. Anasuya is very kind-hearted, very generous, very pious, very pure, and morally upright. And that moral uprightness and humanism can be seen when a person is capable of killing the internal enemies, Arishad Varga, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, easy to conquer perhaps. Matsarya, jealousy, is the final evil. Even the noblest soul is a victim of envy, Vivekananda says. I don't know what I should do to overcome this envy, to make the people loving. The last infirmity of the noblest mind is jealousy. And Matsarya is Asuya, Anasuya, moral uprightness, ethical excellence. She is prepared to serve everybody, useful to everybody. When Narada came, when Trimurtis came, you take these stories of symbolic significance, spiritual significance. In a mind of moral uprightness, in a heart of ethical excellence, there will spring up the spiritual unfoldment. Show me a single yogi who is selfish. Show me a single yogi who is jealous. Show me a single yogi who is angry for the destruction of the society. Show me a single yogi who is self-centered. Show me a single yogi who is cruel. Never. Sri Krishna is the greatest humanist. On account of his boundless concern for the society, he has come as an incarnation. And Sri Rama says, Abhayam dadami sarva bhuteshu etat vratam mama. Abhayam, fearlessness. On account of my compassion, I do offer my fearlessness. I make everybody fearless because of that moral value, ethical value. The very purpose of Sri Ramachandra Prabhu, the very purpose of Sri Krishna Paramatma is to be useful. In the recent times, we have Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa to be useful. In the recent times, we have Swami Ramana Maharshi to be useful to the society, to dispel ignorance, to rid the people of their attachments. What happens? Any humanism or any moral code of conduct born out of this will be a bondage. And therefore, yoga is to be seen from the higher levels. Arjuna was taught the entire Bhagavad Gita. He was elevated. He was made to transcend. That by the sentence which he used at the end, nasto moha, no more attachment, no more bondage, etc. 13th day started. On the 13th day of the Mahābhārata Yuddha, Abhimanyu entered the Padma Vyuha or Chakra Vyuha. He was isolated. The veteran warriors, Drona, Ashwadhama, Krupa, Duryodhana, Dushyasana, Karna, all these stalwarts massacred him, killed him. And that night, Arjuna said, I will not fight. My dear Krishna, get me my son back. Abhimanyu's life must be restored. Sri Krishna said, no, I cannot. It's not possible for me to bring the dead back to life. Arjun says, no, don't say you cannot. Kartum akartum anyatha kartum sektaha. Aghatita ghatana samarthaha. You are capable of doing and undoing and differently doing anything. You go to the Yamaloka. bring my son back. Otherwise, I want to fight. Krishna says, please, sir, no, I'm sorry, I do not know, I cannot do it. Don't say it. When you were a boy, when you were in the Gurukul of Sandipani, when the master's son died, when Gurupatni pleaded, you went to Yamaloka, fought with Yamadharmaraj and brought that dead son back to life. You are capable of doing it. Do it. Now Krishna has concern for Arjun, his own sister's husband. Subhadra's son is Abhimanyu. Subhadra's husband is Arjun. And there is a crisis. He is basically a person of compassion. The same Abhimanyu was protected when Ashwadhama's, Parikshit was protected. Once he is going to be protected. All these things, such a kind person, now he says no. Why? Again, attachment. Arjuna was pleading. Then Arjuna was taken into the chariot. He was taken to in Chandraloka. There he was shown Abhimanyu. I will be getting the horses ready. I have to refuel the aircraft or the Ratham. Please go in and bring him. Arjuna goes in, talks to Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu is seated on a throne. There was a beautiful girl by his side, Rohini, and 27 girls were dancing. Arjuna goes, my son. Abhimanyu looks at him. Who is whose son? In which drama did you act like my father? In which drama did I act like your son? These relationships are temporary. When I take up a particular form, then you take up a particular form at a particular time, we are attached to each other. The drama is over. From the green room, we come out. We remove the makeup. Who are you? Who am I? In the great river Ganga, two sticks come together, travel together, and they get separated. Life is like that. And Arjuna pleaded with Abhimanyu, you, my son, Subhadra's son, etc., etc. Will you get out or shall I throw you out? It is like a man from the village going to America to see his software engineer son. That fellow drives the father out and tells his white bird or friend or wife, this man was my cook once upon a time in the village. Then the father gets the blow, comes back. Same is the shock treatment given by Krishna to Arjun to overcome attachment. And then comes the realization. Arjun returned. Where is your son? No, my son, nothing doing. They came back. This is a story available in Mahābhārata. Everywhere you find humanism being taken to a higher level. The great Mahābhārata Yuddha was over. At the commencement of the Yuddha, Arjuna was despondent. After the completion of the Yuddha, Dharmaraj was despondent. What Arjuna said at the commencement of the Yuddha, Dharmaraj said at the end of the Yuddha, I don't want the crown. I don't want the throne. Please allow me to go to the forest, close my nostrils and do tapasya. Why? I was responsible for the bloodshed. I was responsible for the deaths of so many people. Today we have many orphans and widows. I don't want this. Humanism. And then Krishna took Dharmaraj to Bhishma. Maybe Krishna was tired of repeating the Bhagavad Gita once again. He wanted the practical philosopher, thinker, Bhishma to enlighten Dharmaraj. He took Dharmaraj to Bhishma. And Bhishma gives in Shanti and Anushasana Parvas the entire philosophy, the relationship between morality on one side and ethics on another side, their relationship with yoga, and that single sloka which we find in the Bhagavad Gita is Na hankruto bhavo buddhiryasya na lipyate hatva visayimam lokan na hanti na nibadhyate. What is that? cause for all despondency, ego. Aham, aham, aham. And moham, moham, moham. And then maya, mama maya duratyaya mam eva prapadyanti. And that is you. We find these words interrelated in every upakhyana of Mahābhārata, in every character of Mahābhārata, and in every instruction of Sri Krishna, we find the values, we find the moral values, we find the ethical values, and the culmination, unfoldment, yoga. Yoga is not exclusively for a chosen few. All our great yogis never left the society, they lived. And recently we had a paper. If there was a yogi really meditating, within a range of about 5 kilometers, there will be no evil. There will be no cruelty. There will be no untoward incident. There will be no premature death. We have published that. There is every possibility. Why should yogis be present? For the social peacefulness, for the people's sobriety, for the calm atmosphere. The head of the family should be a yogi. In the Ramayana, you have the 4 capitals. In Lanka, the king was lustful. He died a tragic death and the people suffered. In Kishkinda, we find the king Vali proud, conceited, not a yogi. He died a miserable death and his people suffered. If you come to Ayodhya, Moha, attachment of Dasharatha, died of heart attack, died a miserable death, and people also wept. You come to Janaka Maharaj, in Mithila, you find there the king to be peaceful always, blissful always, and the entire country was peaceful. The king of the country should be peaceful and blissful, a yogi. Head of the family should be a yogi. And what is a yogi? A person of moral values, a person of ethical values, and a person of spiritual values. Moral values are prepared by the custodians of society. Ethical values are intrinsic. Ethical values are inborn, and they are all to be maintained, sustained with detachment. Bhishma is never a sinner, though he has killed many. So let us understand the spirit of yoga. Let us look at every incident in the Mahābhārata through the eyes of a yogi. Paramahansa Yogananda Giri's example was brought. He was able to practice yoga, practice detachment, and at the same time be useful and peaceful to others. That is the greatness of this country. These people never waged a war, and at the same time they were able to spread the waves of calmness. Today, yoga is global, not the physical exercises alone. If you take Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Ashta Anga Yoga, Yama, Niyama, they are both moral and ethical values. Satya, Ahimsa, Aparigraha, Asteya, Brahmacharya. Second, Saucha, Santosha, Swadhyaya. You find the two put together very closely, well knit together. That is moral value and spiritual value. At the level of moral values, you have honesty, integrity, and probity. Honesty is a negative virtue. Integrity is a positive virtue. Probity is an established virtue. People are speaking of religion. People are speaking of caste. People are speaking of various things. Why don't we speak of integrity? There is corruption, corruption, corruption everywhere. Is it honesty? Is it integrity? How can we call ourselves yogis when we are corrupt? Who can transcend the moral values? In the entire Mahābhārata Yuddha, Shri Krishna transcended the moral values. He brought Sikhandi, got Bhishma killed or dropped down. And he made Dharmaraj tell a lie, and he got Drona killed. Who can transcend a person without attachment? A person without egoism? A person who has transcended the moral values, that does not mean he neglects them. He is a man of concern. That this subtle dimension is to be understood, and is understood only by a yogi. When a philosophical center in Delhi University is taking up these projects, we must be in a position to bring out the difference between law and justice. Law is man-made. Justice is divine. Law is meant to do justice. When law fails to do justice, only a yogi does it. And that yogi is Sri Krishna. Therefore, yogi is perfect. Yogi is flawless. Yogi is capable of doing and undoing. That is Parameshvara. That is Paramatma. That is Yogishvara. I request the philosophy department of Delhi University to bring out the difference between law and justice from the philosophic point of view. Yogi can never be of attachment. Yogi is always of detachment. And for that you have Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and others. Jnana is the highest truth, one's awareness of the truth. And a person who dedicates his entire life with love is Bhakti Yoga. When you have that stern will, strong will to establish that dharma, it is Raja Yoga. Every action is full of service to the fellow human beings, and that is a Karma Yogi. Sri Krishna is the ideal Karma Yogi. Sri Krishna is the ideal Jnani. Sri Krishna is the ideal Raja Yogi, and Sri Krishna is himself a person of the great self-surrender to the Atman. That we find when he was shot by a hunter at the end. He submits himself with a smiling face. These subtle differences have to be brought out, and the people must be educated. The value of honesty, moral values, the value of compassion, ethical values, how they are to be observed, nitya naimittika karmas. These subtleties are to be brought to the surface, and everybody should be taught. The values must be brought in simplest terms. Philosophy is not for those people who are of abstract thinking. A small incident, I say and keep quiet. Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda were high intellectuals. They both were one day discussing the philosophical concepts, abstract principles, spiritual dimensions. Then Latu, a boy from Bihar, who later became Swami Adbhutananda, one of the colleagues of the first 16 disciples, he came. He was an illiterate. He asked Brahmanandaji and Vivekanandaji, what is it both of you are discussing? Brahmananda and Vivekananda in a single voice said, this is above your head, man. You cannot understand pure mathematics. You cannot understand pure science. You cannot understand pure spirituality. You go away. Then Latu said, what is the use of your philosophy if it is not understood by me? What is the use of your spirituality if it is not understood by me? What is the use of your yogic life when it is not useful to me? We must be peaceful, and at the same time we must be useful. When he gave instructions to the first editor, Rajarao, he said, Swami Vivekananda, the highest truths must be presented in the simplest words. And our Mahābhārata is an explanation of that. When you take every story, it is profound with the highest spiritual truth. Thank you very much. I tried to give two definitions for yoga. I want you to discuss them, see whether they are right. Yoga is inclusive of all values and transcends all values. Yoga is to be peacefully useful and usefully peaceful. These definitions cannot be found in any book. These are my definitions. After a long study and experience, experimenting with yoga, I was able to evolve to these two definitions. Yoga includes all values, moral values, ethical values, and transcends them. Yogeshwara is that. Sri Krishna is like that. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. While narrating the story, I jumped from Abhimanyu to Parikshit, and Abhimanyu, there was a small slip. You might have noticed it. Thank you very much. I thank our young boy, Professor Bala Ganapati. Wonderfully he is organizing, and I request him to organize several such webinars useful to the society, not only to those people sitting in the ivory towers, AC rooms of philosophy department. That is the greatest defect with us. Either we are too high, not available to the ordinary people, or too low, not reaching the heights. Sri Krishna Paramatma is both useful to the ordinary people, and when I say ordinary people, gopis. On the other side, Uddhava, an abstract thinker, and he brought the great person Uddhava to the gopis illiterate, brought them together to explain what yoga is. Let us not go to the ivory towers. Let us not become bookworms to produce articles and conduct seminars. Let us come out to the society to be useful to everybody. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you, Professor Bala. I, as always, take up the opportunity to conclude the session. So on behalf of the Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, Kamala Nehru College, Spark Project team, Professor Bala and myself, I thank our esteemed speakers for enlightening us about yoga in terms of peacefully useful and usefully peaceful, as well as calmly active and actively calm. And Dr. Bala summed it up through his own understanding of yoga, through the various philosophical texts that have been dealing on yoga consciousness. Thank you, Professor Bala, for sharing these words today on the occasion of commemorating the International Yoga Day. So much has been shared by the distinguished names on yoga scholarship and practice that further addition of words from my side would not be required. We can only go back, reflect on the words, and initiate ourselves to even an ounce of practice of yoga alongside the knowledge of yoga, even if it turns out to be a little burdensome. Because the practice of humanism, the practice of values, and yes, the practice of ethics all together is together for us, yoga. Well, our participants have been the real source of encouragement for all of us to have continued with this ongoing series of webinars. And this is what Professor Bala and I strongly feel. And we really thank our participants for being with us from the first week of June 2020 and encouraging us and pushing us to invite so many scholars who have shared their thoughts, views, and ideas about Mahābhārata and Bhagavad Gita. Well, friends, the first strain of COVID virus actually pushed us positively to start this ongoing series of webinars. And we could reach out to you, and connect with you. Now, during this whole course of battling with the second strain, we felt pushed to come up with the second offshoot of this ongoing project involving the undergraduates and the younger lot who will be encouraged to learn through the teachings of Mahābhārata certain important values. We are very, very happy to announce that by the end of this month, we will be launching the new series under the edges of the ongoing project, the Spark project, which is being titled as Sanjay Uvacha, Behind the Scenes of Mahābhārata. Well, I'm not going to reveal everything today, but just to share with you that this will be our humble attempt to use the art of storytelling to bring forth the relevance of stories in Mahābhārata for the present age. Professor Bala and I welcome all of you to join us in this new series too, as well as we request you to carry on as well as share this message of ours with others, the younger lot who can also become a part of this little effort of ours. I request you all to follow our social media handles, the Insta, the Facebook, our webpage, and yes, our lectures are all there on the YouTube channel, which we are trying to curate as and when we are getting time. So if you want to know more about the forthcoming series, please keep a track of all our social media handles. Yes, it is Sanjay Uvacha, to explore the rich diversity of India through the richer tradition of Mahābhārata. Keep your fingers crossed. We will be writing and updating you all about it in coming days, in the week ahead. I thank all of you. I thank Professor Subrahmanyam for being with us. I thank Mr. Atray for sparing time. I thank all our participants, all the participants who consistently and constantly join us each time, each Saturday, sparing special time for us, which is a great encouragement for us to keep moving on. And that's what Mahābhārata is all about. Thank you all.